whispers in the walls. The house sat 3 doors up from the end of Willow Street, where the pavement gave up and turned to gravel and then to field. It was the kind of place you only noticed if you were on foot, if you were the sort who looked at porches and hedges instead of at your phone. Claire almost missed it the first day. She had a cardboard tray of coffees balanced against her hip, her arms sore from carrying boxes up the narrow stairs of the rental next door. Willow Street had seemed quiet enough when she signed the lease on the small, tired duplex. Affordable, the lady at the agency had said, as if that made up for anything. Good schools, low crime, perfect for a new start. She did not care about perfect. She cared about available. The moving truck had coughed itself away right after sunset, leaving her with the echo of its rumble and a living room full of shapes under thrifted sheets. Her daughter Lily had claimed the smaller of the 2 bedrooms without drama, curling up on her mattress with a stuffed rabbit and a flashlight, while Claire made a list on a legal pad by the glow of the oven light. Cleaning supplies, curtain rods, milk, cereal, a plunger, extra trash bags, more coffee. Now she walked back from the corner store with the paper tray softening under her fingers, the air sharp in her lungs. It was late fall. The trees along Willow Street clung to their last leaves, brown and brittle, branches scratching at a sky that was more gray than blue. She glanced up when she felt the change in the air. Her own rental was on the right, with its peeling white paint and sagging porch, the screen door that did not quite close. Directly across from it, on the left side of the street, a low ranch house crouched behind a chain-link fence, yard littered with toys, gone sun, cracked and faded. Beyond that, half turned away from the street, sat another house, taller, older. Its porch roof leaned, the boards patched in spots with mismatched lumber. The front steps had sunk a little on one side, warping the angle of the railing. The yard, such as it was, held a few stubborn tufts of grass around the base of a maple tree that had lost most of its leaves. The house looked as if it had been slowly sinking into itself since before she was born. What made her slow was not its sagging lines, but the windows. They were bare. No curtains, no blinds, no plants in chipped pots on the sills. The glass caught the gray light and gave nothing back. Every other house on the street showed some sign of life, even if only a faded flag or a plastic lawn chair. This one sat like an empty stage. Claire could feel eyes on her, though she knew there were none. Lily had that same prickling sense sometimes when they walked into a new place. She would cling to Claire's hand and whisper, "Someone was here before," like it was a secret only she could hear. Claire shifted the coffee tray to her other hip and kept walking. On the second trip back from the store, with a bag of groceries digging into her fingers, she looked again. A woman was standing on the porch of the sagging house, leaning on the railing as if testing whether it would hold. Medium height, gray hair pulled back in a loose knot. A heavy cardigan wrapped close around her, a kind of blue that had once been bright and was now dulled by years. Claire startled, not because of the woman, but because she had not seen or heard the door open. The woman lifted a hand in a small wave. "You must be the new neighbor," she called. Her voice carried easily across the narrow street, steady and a little amused. Claire nodded, bumping the grocery bag against her knee. "Just moved in," she said. "We are in the yellow-sided one." "I know which one," the woman said. "That place has seen more tenants than a bus stop. I am Ida." "Claire," she said. "My daughter and I just got here." Ida's gaze softened. "How old?" she asked. 7, Claire said. The word came out with more weariness than pride. "Her name is Lily." "Pretty," Ida said. "I will let you get back to it. If you need anything, I am usually here." This place does not move me far these days. Something in the way she said it, a half-joke wrapped around a truth, made Claire smile despite herself. "Thank you," she said. Ida nodded and turned toward her own door. Just before she went inside, she paused, hand on the knob. "You keep an eye on your walls in that house," she said without looking back. Paint covers a lot, but not everything. The remark was strange enough that it ought to have stuck harder. But Claire had a kid half awake on a bare mattress, a fridge to fill, a bathroom to check for mold. The walls inside her rental were a blank off-white, bearing the scars of previous tenants in nail holes and scuffs. She had no energy to wonder what Ida meant. She carried the groceries up the steps and let the screen door bang behind her. By the end of the week, Willow Street had settled around them. Claire found the best times to hit the laundromat without waiting for a dryer. She learned which lanes at the supermarket moved fastest, which cashier smiled at Lily, which one slapped the groceries around like they had done something wrong. She started to recognize cars by their dents and bumper stickers when they rolled past the front window. Lily fell into the rhythm quicker. Kids did. Her small backpack hung on the hook by the door, already bearing a smear of something purple that would never wash out. She came home from school with construction paper drawings and stories about classmates with names. Claire forgot 5 minutes later, but that Lily repeated as if they were carved in stone. The art teacher said I could stay after school and help clean the brushes, Lily announced one afternoon, dropping her things on the floor and heading straight for the kitchen. Just on Tuesdays and Thursdays. "Is that okay?" Claire, elbow deep in the sink wrangling dinner dishes, wiped her hands on a towel. "Sure," she said, "as long as you still get your homework done." Lily nodded solemnly and reached for an apple, teeth sinking into it with a crunch that filled the small space. After supper, Claire loaded the dishwasher and listened to the hum of the machine blend with the faint traffic from the street. The rental's walls showed their age in hairline cracks near the ceiling, in the way the paint had bubbled in patches around the windows. The beige carpet in the living room had mysterious stains that no cleaner could fully lift. She had seen worse. She had moved Lily through 3 apartments in as many years, each one a temporary landing spot. Shorter commute, cheaper rent, safer block. There was always a reason to leave. This time, there was also a reason to come. A teaching job at the elementary school, a title that came with health insurance and the illusion of stability. She told herself they would stay here longer. Maybe long enough for Lily to remember this as a childhood home, instead of just another stretch of boxes and borrowed couches. The only thing that nagged at her was the wallpaper in Lily's room. It had been there when they arrived. The landlord had pointed it out with a vague gesture, saying, "You can paint if you want, just keep the receipt." The pattern showed small flowers and vines, faded but still distinct against the pale background. It stopped at a clean line halfway up the wall, as if someone had once intended to add a chair rail and never did. Above it, the paint was the same off-white as the rest of the house. Lily had liked it right away. "It looks like the walls have a garden," she had said, running her fingers over the raised texture. "Can we keep it?" Claire had considered the work of stripping and painting, the time it would take, the fumes she did not want Lily breathing. "We can keep it," she said. "Maybe later we will change it if you get tired of the flowers." Now, on a quiet evening a few weeks in, Claire stood in the doorway of Lily's room with a basket of folded laundry and looked at the wallpaper. It seemed to glow faintly in the lamplight. The vines curled and looped, the small flowers opening in repeating clusters. The pattern was simple, old-fashioned. Yet the longer she looked, the more her eyes slid along loops that did not quite match. "Mom," Lily mumbled from the bed, half buried in blankets. "You are staring." "Just thinking," Claire said. "About what?" Lily asked, eyes slitting open. "About how I should have made you help me carry this basket," she said, shifting it exaggeratedly. Lily grinned sleepily, then rolled onto her side, hugging the rabbit to her chest. "Good night," Claire said, stepping in to set the clothes on the dresser. She smoothed the edge of the quilt. "No more reading." You have school in the morning." "I was not reading," Lily said. "I was listening." "To what?" Claire asked. Lily's eyes flicked toward the wall. "They whisper when it gets dark," she said matter-of-factly. "The flowers. It is like when the radio is not on a station." "Only softer," Claire inhaled. She knew better than to argue with a 7-year-old about what they heard at night. She remembered being that age, convinced she could make out voices in the hum of the central air, in the distant wash of highway noise outside her bedroom window. "Try to sleep," she said. "If they say anything interesting, you can tell me in the morning." "Okay," Lily said. Her eyelids sank. Her breathing deepened. Claire stood there longer than she needed to, listening. The room held the small sounds of a sleeping child, the creak of the house settling, the muffled rush of water in the pipes as someone next door ran a bath. No whispers. She turned off the lamp and pulled the door nearly closed, leaving it open a crack. As she stepped into the hallway, her back prickled. She looked back over her shoulder. In the dim spill from the hall light, the wallpaper showed as a darker band around the room. The vine pattern softened to shadows. For a second, the loops seemed to shift, curling into shapes that did not belong to flowers. She blinked. The pattern lay still. Her mind was tired. The move, the new job, the endless stream of small demands had worn her thin. It was easy to see things in corners when your brain was running on coffee and stubbornness. She made herself walk away. That night, Claire woke to the sound of rain. It drummed on the roof in a steady, heavy patter, the kind that made the gutters overflow. She lay in the dark, listening, counting between the flashes of light that slipped in around the edges of the curtains and the low roll of thunder that followed. In the room next door, Lily murmured something in her sleep. Claire got up to check the windows, toes curling against the cold floor. She paused at the doorway to Lily's room. The air in there felt different, cooler, damp. She stepped inside. The lamp on the dresser, the one she had left off, glowed faintly. Not bright, not enough to fully illuminate the room. Just a soft, steady light, as if someone had turned the switch to some in-between setting. The wallpaper around the lower half of the room shimmered. She froze. The flowers and vines were moving. Not in an obvious swaying way, like plants in a breeze, but in a slow, twisting crawl, as if the design were adjusting itself on the plaster. One vine slipped under another where it had not before. A cluster of petals shifted, changing the angle of their blossoms. Claire took a step closer, heart pounding. She had stripped plenty of wallpaper in her life. She knew the way it bubbled when it lifted from damp walls, the way it peeled in strips. This was not that. The paper lay flat. Only the printed pattern moved, the ink itself sliding. She reached out. Her fingers brushed the surface. It was dry, smooth. The raised texture of the flowers pressed back into her fingertips. Under her touch, the line of a vine hesitated. Then it continued its slow drift, ignoring her. Lily sighed in her sleep, rolling onto her back. Claire snatched her hand away as if burned. She looked at the lamp. Its switch was firmly in the off position. The light seemed to be coming from behind the wallpaper, a faint glow bleeding through the paper and paint. She backed out of the room, throat tight. In the hallway, the air was normal. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the patter of the rain, the distant hiss of tires on wet pavement all reached her in their usual ways. She stood there, one hand on the door frame, listening. From inside Lily's room came the faintest sound, not quite whispering, more like the soft rustle of pages turning in another room. She could have walked in and torn the wallpaper down right then. Woken Lily peeled the paper from the walls in long, satisfying strips, bagged it, taken the bags out to the curb. She could have texted the landlord in the morning and told him she was repainting, that the old paper was musty, that it made her daughter's allergies act up. Instead, She closed the door to a narrow slit, just as she had before, and told herself there would be time to deal with it later. In the morning, the wallpaper looked exactly as it had when they moved in. The lamp sat politely off. The pattern lay still, the flowers and vines neat and faded. Lily ate her cereal at the kitchen table with her hair sticking out in every direction and her socks mismatched, chattering about a science video they had watched in class. "Do you remember anything from last night?" Claire asked, pouring coffee. "Any dreams?" Lily chewed thoughtfully. "I dreamed there was a fair in the hallway," she said. "With paper people? They had puppets and they wanted me to watch, but my rabbit was scared." "Paper people," Claire repeated, and forced a smile. "Sounds like a strange fair." "They dissolved when you opened the door," Lily said, like it was an obvious consequence. "They do not like you." "Who does not like me?" Claire asked lightly, though her stomach tightened. "The people inside the walls," Lily said, wiping milk from her chin. "They were saying you do not belong here." "Finish your breakfast," Claire said. At work that day, in her classroom with its varnished floors and fluorescent lights, her mind kept drifting back to the wallpaper. The kids were restless. The change in weather made them edgier, more inclined to stare out the window than at the math problems on the board. She held their attention with stories and questions, her voice finding its teacher cadence. But part of her stood in the doorway of that small bedroom, watching ink slide under her fingers. On her lunch break, she sat alone in the staff room, the smell of microwave leftovers and burnt coffee thick in the air. The other teachers buzzed around her with their own conversations, grading stacks, phone calls. Ida came to mind. Her house across the street, its bare windows, her remark about walls. After school, Claire walked home with Lily, their steps falling in tandem on the cracked sidewalk. The air had that washed, raw feel after rain, puddles puddled in low spots reflecting dull sky. Ida was on her porch again, cardigan wrapped tight, a mug cupped in her hands. "Afternoon," she called as they drew level. "Hi," Lily said, waving. She was not shy with adults yet, not until they gave her reason. "Hey," Claire said. "How are you?" "Same as always," Ida said. "I have been in this house longer than the trees out front." They know better than to ask. Her gaze drifted past them, to Claire's front door, to the narrow windows flanking it. "How are you settling in?" she asked. "Getting there," Claire said. "There is always more cleaning, more boxes. It takes time," Ida said. "Especially with kids. They fill a place up differently." She sipped from her mug. "I meant it about the walls," she added after a moment. "Some houses hold on to things. Yours had another family in it before, for a while. They did not leave much behind that you can see. But that does not mean they did not leave." Claire felt the hair on her arms stir. "Why did they move out?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Ida's eyes were on the maple tree, watching the way its last leaves trembled. "They did not," she said. "Not the way most people mean it." She nodded toward the street. "One morning their car sat in the drive, iced over like always," she said. "Lights were off. Dog was in the yard, whining. No one saw them leave. By nightfall, lights were still off. That is not how young families live. They are always flipping switches." "What happened?" Claire asked. "Police came," Ida said. "Then others. They went in, went through everything, took things out in bags. Spent the better part of a week walking in and out. Then they boarded it up for a while. The rental agency owns it now. Same as yours." She took another sip, the mug hiding her mouth. "They said they found nothing," she added. "No blood. No sign of struggle. Just an empty house. But you look at it enough, you see where something has been scraped away." Claire's chest felt tight. "Do you know their names?" she asked. "Names come and go," Ida said. "What I remember is the daughter had a bike with streamers. She used to ride it in circles out here, right up to the property line, like something was stopping her from going any farther. She nodded toward Claire's place. "I remember hearing things through the walls, once in a while," she said. "Not arguments, not music, just voices, low, like someone talking to themselves in the dark. After a while, it went quiet. Too quiet." Lily had drifted a few steps ahead, hopping over a crack. She bent to poke at something on the sidewalk, absorbed. "Kids hear things we do not," Ida said softly. "Houses talk to them first. Easier to get through whatever they carry around. You watch what she says. She will tell you what the place wants." The words settled heavy between them. Claire opened her mouth to say something brisk, something that would put distance between herself and this neighbor with her too perceptive eyes and her talk of houses wanting things. Instead, she said, "Did your house ever do that?" Ida glanced back at her own door. "It tried," she said. "I decided to listen on my own terms." She tipped her mug toward Claire. "You better get inside," she said. "It will rain again before dark. These streets flood if you let them." Claire nodded and walked on, Lily falling back into step beside her. "Ida's house is sad," Lily said quietly. "How do you know?" Claire asked. "It sighs," Lily said. "At night. You can feel it against your pillow." Claire almost laughed. It sounded like something a child with too much imagination would say, the kind of line that in another mood she would have written down to save. But her throat was dry. She unlocked their door. The air inside felt as if someone had been there while they were gone, not in any specific way. No objects moved, no smell of foreign perfume. Just a shifted sense, the way a room feels after you open a window for a while and then close it again. Something carried through, something left. Lily dumped her backpack and headed straight for her room. Claire followed. The wallpaper greeted her like a held breath. In the afternoon light slanting through the small window, the pattern looked harmless. Flowers, vines, a bit of curling flourish around the corners where someone had worked the paper around the trim. Only when she stepped closer did she see that the loops of the vines around the head of Lily's bed formed shapes that were not quite random. Curved lines that, if you squinted, made letters. Eli, it was like looking at a word half erased on a chalkboard. She reached for the roll of painter's tape in the cardboard box by the door. She tore off a strip and slapped it over the section of wall above the headboard. Lily's head popped up behind her. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Fixing something," Claire said. Her voice sounded thin to her own ears. "We need to cover this until we can paint." "I like the flowers," Lily said, frowning. "They talk to me." "I know," Claire said. "That is what I am worried about." She taped over a few more loops, hands moving faster than her thoughts, covering any curves that even suggested letters. Lily watched, rabbit hugged to her chest. "They will not like that," she said softly. Claire paused. "Who?" she asked. "The ones behind," Lily said. "They are listening through the cracks. They do not like it when you close them." "Enough," Claire said, sharper than she meant to. "We are going to have dinner. After that, we can play cards." Lily's mouth tightened. She said nothing. That night, as the house settled into its creaks and tickings, Claire sat at the small kitchen table with her laptop open, email blinking at her. She read the principal's message about upcoming assessments twice, without absorbing it. Her mind kept sliding back to the wallpaper, to the small movements she had seen, to Ida's story, to her own daughter's matter-of-fact acceptance that the walls whispered. The word behind pressed on her. She drew in a breath and stood. In the hallway, the light flickered once and steadied. She walked past Lily's door, listening. The soft rhythm of her breathing came through the wood, steady and slow. No whispers, no sighs. She went into her own room instead. The walls in there were plain, the off-white paint making the space feel hollow. Her own bed, a cheap frame with a mattress a step up from the floor, sat under the single window. The dresser bore a few framed photos, the only personal touch she had bothered with so far. Her reflection in the small mirror above the dresser looked back at her, tired but solid. She turned to the corner where the two walls met near the foot of the bed. In the angle of that joint, the paint had cracked in a thin, jagged line. The crack ran from the baseboard halfway up, a faint shadow in the dim light. She reached out and laid her fingertips against it. The wall felt cool and dry. For a second, she thought she felt a faint vibration under her skin, like the hum of a distant engine. Then it was gone. She pulled her hand back, wiped it on her jeans. Sleep came in fits that night. She dreamed of standing in a field of wallpaper. The paper rolled out over the grass in long strips, patterns writhing. She walked between the strips, the edges licking at her ankles like tongues. When she looked up, the sky was not sky at all, but an endless ceiling covered in the same paper, the vines and flowers crowding together until no bare space remained. In the dream, she heard Lily's voice calling her name from somewhere behind the walls. In the morning, she woke with her jaw aching from clenched teeth. The next noticeable change came on a Sunday. They had been in the house a little over a month. The air had turned colder, breath puffing white outside in the early hours. Claire had taken to running the heater in short bursts, watching the numbers on the thermostat like a hawk. Lily spent most of the day on the living room floor with crayons and a stack of printer paper, drawing houses. "Are these places you remember?" Claire asked, rinsing old coffee out of a mug. Lily shook her head. "They are places that remember us," she said. "They do not like to be forgotten." The drawing showed small, square houses with tacked-on porches, lines for siding, squares for windows. In each one, the walls inside were decorated with curls and loops. Tiny eyes peered out from between the shapes. Claire forced her gaze away. That night, as she tucked Lily in, the wallpaper again seemed to glow faintly in the lamplight. "You have to listen," Lily said sleepily, eyes at half-mast. "They are getting louder." "Who?" Claire asked, though she already knew. "The ones in the halls," Lily said. "They are hungry." "For what?" Claire asked. "For rooms," Lily said. She yawned, jaw cracking, and rolled onto her side. Claire lay awake longer than she should have, the house's small noises grinding against her nerves. Sometime around the time the clocks in other houses might have shown the hours when the night is deepest, she woke to a new sound. A soft, not quite scraping, not quite slithering noise, as if something was shifting under layers of fabric. She sat up, heart pounding, and listened. The sound came from the hallway. She slid from the bed, bare feet landing on cold floor, and eased her door open. The hallway was dark, lit only by the faint wash of light from the street through the front window. The sound was clearer now. It came from the walls. She stepped closer to the painted surface, the off-white expanse that had looked so plain when they moved in. She saw with a jolt that the paint itself moved, not in bubbles or cracks, but in minute ripples, as if something underneath was shifting. Her stomach lurched. She watched as a hairline line appeared along the hallway wall, starting near the ceiling. It ran horizontally, then curved down, tracing a path toward the floor. The paint along that line seemed to loosen, lifting by a fraction. It was like watching wallpaper peel, but there was no paper she knew of under that paint. The landlord had said the place had been freshened up. She had assumed that meant a quick coat over old plaster. The line deepened. A corner of something pale showed through, then more. She backed away, throat tight. From Lily's room came a soft murmur. "Do not let it in," she whispered, voice thick with sleep. "Lily," Claire said, stepping toward the bedroom door. Her hand brushed the wall. For a split second, the paint under her palm thinned, and she felt something underneath that was not plaster. Smooth, cool, and faintly textured. A surface that felt like cloth, like paper. She snatched her hand back. The line in the hallway wall widened, the paint flaking away in small curls. Beneath it, wallpaper emerged. The pattern was different from Lily's room. The flowers were larger, the vines thicker, the loops more tangled. The colors, though faded, held a deeper, richer tone, as if the paper had been sheltered from light for years. It did not simply reveal itself. It unrolled. Claire watched, transfixed and horrified, as a strip of wallpaper slid out from the crack in the paint, curling downward along the wall like a slow, deliberate spill. The top edge stayed anchored somewhere in the unseen space behind the plaster while the rest unfolded. The sound she had heard was the paper moving. In the dim light, the pattern writhed. She stumbled back into her room and slammed the door. On the other side, the slow, soft noise continued, like fabric dragging. She pressed her back against the door and slid down until she sat on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, palms flat on the rough wood at either side. Her breath came fast and shallow. She stayed there until the noise stopped. When she finally opened the door, the hallway wall bore a new strip of wallpaper, halfway down the length, from ceiling to floor. The paint at the edges curled, as if resentful. The pattern on the new strip matched the paper in Lily's room. Claire's hands shook as she reached out. The surface was smooth, the texture of the printed vines raised under her fingers. It felt as solid and permanent as any paper glued to a wall. She went to Lily's room and pushed the door open. The child sat up in bed, hair a tangle, eyes wide. "You heard it," Lily said. "Yes," Claire said. "It is tricky," Lily said. "It goes where you do not look. It asked me which room it could have. I told it I did not know." Claire's mind pushed at the edges of something. An image of wallpaper not confined to one room, but stretching, reaching. She walked back to the hallway and stared at the new strip. A thought rose in her like bile. If the wallpaper could move, if it could peel itself from one place and slide under paint to another, then it was not just a decorative skin. It was something active, crawling under the surface of the house. She felt suddenly as if she were standing inside a living thing's rib cage. For the next few days, she watched the walls. She checked them in the morning before school, at lunch if she ran home for a forgotten paper, in the evening as she moved from kitchen to living room to bedroom. She saw nothing happen directly. The paint sat dull and cracked. The wallpaper in Lily's room lay still. The new strip in the hallway did not move. At night, the sounds came back. Soft rustling, like tissue paper being dragged slowly over wood. A faint sighing, as if the house itself exhaled through its seams. She slept badly. One afternoon, she went next door. Ida answered the door with a dish towel in one hand, the smell of onions and something savory drifting out behind her. "You look like you have met the neighborhood," Ida said, eyes sharp. Claire swallowed. "The wallpaper," she said, "in my daughter's room. In the hallway now, it is. Moving." Ida leaned her hip against the doorframe. "Most folks would say you need more rest," she said. "Or less." "I saw it," Claire said, heat rising in her face. "I touched it. It is working its way out from under the paint. My kid hears it. She says there are people behind it." "Kids hear lots of things," Ida said. "But that does not mean there is nothing there." She glanced back into her own dim hallway, where the walls were painted a dull blue, no paper in sight. "That house of yours has a history," she said. "Before the family that vanished, it belonged to an older couple. The wife loved wallpaper. Every room had a different pattern. Ferns, stripes, roses. People used to joke that you could get lost just looking at it." "What happened to them?" Claire asked. "She died," Ida said simply. He moved out, left the paper. The next people painted over some of it. The couple after that stripped some. It has been under coats and coats. Paint does not kill it. It only makes it wait. Claire rubbed at the bridge of her nose. "You sound like you knew this would happen," she said. Ida's mouth curved in something that was not quite a smile. "I knew something would happen," she said. "Rooms do not like to be empty. They find ways to fill themselves. I should tear it down," Claire said. "All of it. Every strip. You can try," Ida said. There was no malice in her tone, only a quiet resignation. Claire walked home with a roll of black trash bags under one arm and a scraper in her hand. She started in the hallway. She scored the wallpaper strip with the scraper, digging through the paint at the seam. The paper flaked away reluctantly, curling under the blade in small pieces. Underneath, the wall showed a darkened plaster, scarred by older adhesive. She bagged the paper, pressing the air out of the black plastic until it crackled. She tied the top in a knot that bit into her fingers. In Lily's room, she worked along one wall, peeling and scraping. The paper came away in sections, some larger, some stubborn. The flowers fell apart as the glue relinquished them. The vines unraveled. Lily watched from the bed, knees drawn up, rabbit in her lap. "They will get mad," she said. "They can be mad," Claire said through clenched teeth. "This is our house now." She stripped until the wall was raw and uneven, streaked with the ghosts of old patterns. Her shoulders burned. Dust clung to her hair and clothes. Her hands ached. She left the other 3 walls for another day. Her body could not take more. That night, she dragged the heavy trash bags out to the curb, breath steaming in the cold air, fingers numb on the dark plastic. The bags felt as if they held more than paper. They pulled at her arms like sandbags. She left them by the edge of the street and went inside. In the early hours, she woke to the sound of the garbage truck lumbering down Willow Street. Beep, hiss, clank. The familiar noises of the machine, lifting bins, dumping, setting them back. She lay in bed and listened for the thunk of bags being taken. The truck paused outside their house. Silence filled the gap where the rumble should have been. Then the machine started up again, moving on. In the morning, the bags sat exactly where she had left them. She walked out in her pajamas and boots, breath a white cloud, and prodded one with her toe. It did not move. She bent and grabbed the knot at the top. The bag would not lift. It felt fused to the ground, as if the paper inside had sprouted roots that dug into the cracked pavement. She tugged, jaw tightening. Nothing. The other bags were the same. She wrapped her arms around one and leaned her weight back. The plastic stretched, groaned. One corner tore, a small rip. A bit of wallpaper poked through. The pattern on it had changed. It was no longer the faded flowers from Lily's room. The vines now wound into thin, staring eyes, rows and rows of them, printed along the length. She dropped the bag. Her heart pounded in her throat. She went back inside, shutting the door harder than strictly necessary. She stood with her back against it, feeling the cold through the wood. Lily sat at the kitchen table, spoon in hand, cereal soggy in milk. "They do not want to leave," she said quietly. Claire's hands shook as she poured coffee. "They can stay in the trash," she said. "Let them be mad about that." Lily did not answer. The day at school blurred. Kids wrote in their journals, their pencils squeaking faintly. A boy knocked over a paint jar. Girl cried when her best friend sat with someone else. Claire moved through it all on autopilot, her mind stuck on the image of those eyes on the paper, on the way the bags had refused to budge. When she got home, the bags were gone. Not dragged, not tipped, not torn. Just gone. The spot by the curb where they had sat showed faint, dark smudges, as if something damp had been there and evaporated. The air above smelled faintly of dust and old glue. She stood there until Lily tugged her sleeve. "Mom," she said. The hallway changed. Claire's chest clenched. Inside, the walls were not as she had left them. The hallway, which had been plain off-white punctuated by that single strip, now bore bands of wallpaper running along its length at waist height. They were not full strips, floor to ceiling. Instead, a belt of pattern encircled the hall, like some strange chair rail. The vines and flowers looped around, broken only by door frames and corners. In Lily's room, the wall Claire had stripped showed faint outlines of paper, as if the patterns had seeped back into the plaster. "Stop," Claire whispered, though she knew she was talking to something that did not listen as people did. The air in the room felt strained, stretched. Lily's bed had shifted a few inches away from the wall, though Claire did not remember moving it. The rabbit sat on the pillow, its stitched eyes turned toward the patterned band. That night, Claire dreamed of eyes. She stood in a forest, trees rising around her, their trunks wrapped in wallpaper. Where bark should have been, flowers bloomed, vines twisted, eyes watched. Every direction she turned, the patterns followed. She woke with her heart running and her throat dry. In the weeks that followed, the wallpaper spread. It happened in small increments. A strip around the doorway to the bathroom one day. A square appearing on the living room wall behind the couch the next. The paint in the kitchen curling downward to reveal a thin line of pattern skirting the base of the cabinets. Claire tried to keep up. She scraped and peeled and bagged. She called the landlord, leaving messages that grew more strained. "There is a problem with the walls," she said. "Something under the paint. It keeps coming through. I need to know what is back there. Did you have work done?" Mold, old paper. No one called back. The more she removed, the more came. She began to notice that the patterns were different in each room. In Lily's room, the flowers remained dominant, but the loops between them grew more ornate, curling into shapes that, if you stared long enough, could be read as letters forming her daughter's name. In the hallway, the vines thickened, their leaves narrowing into points. The spaces between held faint suggestions of faces, eyes and mouths emerging from the design, only to dissolve when she blinked. In the small room she used as a study, the wallpaper that emerged under the paint showed not flowers at all, but rows of fine script, too small to read, the lines overlapping in tangled paragraphs. She tried to ignore it. She focused on routines. Up, breakfast, school drop-off, teaching, grading, back home, dinner, baths, bedtime, laundry, dishes, trash, the store of small. Normal tasks kept her from thinking too hard about the way the house's walls now offered no plain surface. Lily's drawings shifted. Houses still, but now the walls inside them were blank. The shapes that had been wallpaper in her early drawings were gone. "Did you change your mind about the patterns?" Claire asked, trying to sound light. "They do not need me to draw them anymore," Lily said. "They are busy." "Busy doing what?" Claire asked. "Looking for doors," Lily said. "They like doors." Claire's gaze drifted toward the hallway, where the wallpaper around each doorway now formed a kind of frame, vines curling toward the trim, flowers blooming at the corners. On a raw afternoon not long before winter break, Ida knocked on their door. Claire opened it to find the older woman wrapped in a heavier coat than usual, cheeks pink from the cold. "I thought you might want some soup," she said, holding up a plastic container. "And to see a different wall for a change." Claire almost refused. She wanted to curl inward, to wrap herself and her child in blankets, and pretend the world outside did not exist. But Ida's eyes were steady, and the smell of the soup warmed her through even the plastic. "Come in," she said. Ida stepped inside and stopped just past the threshold. Her gaze swept the hallway, taking in the bands of pattern, the framing curls around each door. "Quick work," she said softly. "You knew this would happen," Claire said, the words more accusation than question. "I knew it could," Ida said. "Houses that have had their skins peeled do not always like what is underneath. Sometimes they put on another." Claire gestured helplessly at the walls. "What is it?" she asked. "It is not just paper," Ida walked slowly down the hall, one hand trailing near but not quite touching the band of pattern. It started as paper, she said. People paste their tastes onto walls. Florals, stripes, little boats for bathrooms. They want their rooms to say something about them. After a while, the layers add up. The house remembers each one. She stopped in front of Lily's door. Sometimes, she said, the remembering goes both ways. Claire felt anger rise, hot and unsteady. Can you stop talking in circles? She snapped. I have a child sleeping in a room that listens to her dreams. The wallpaper moves. I can hear it. I can feel it. I threw bags of it away, and it came back. Just tell me what you know. Ida turned, meeting her gaze. My house tried to do this, she said. Not with paper. With paneling. Whole sheets of it sliding out of the walls, trying to cover windows and doors. I caught it early. Ripped it down. Left some bare spots on purpose, so it had nothing to hold on to. She nodded toward the patterned hall. You have less bare spots now than you had when you moved in, she said. It is getting brave. How did you make yours stop? Claire asked. Ida smiled without humor. I did not, she said. I told it what it could have. One room, the back bedroom. I do not sleep there. I do not walk there. I let it do what it wants in that one place. Everywhere else I fight. Houses live on compromise. Claire pictured Ida's back room, its closed door, the way she had never seen that part of the house. I cannot give it a room, Claire said. This place barely holds the two of us as it is. Ida's gaze flicked toward Lily's room. You already did, she said quietly. The night you decided not to strip the paper because you were tired. The night you told yourself you would do it later. Claire's breath caught. No, she said, that is not the same. That was just putting it off. Ida's eyes were kind and unyielding. Houses hear the things you do not say out loud, she said. They make bargains you do not remember making. A soft sound came from Lily's room. A murmur, the creak of bed springs. Claire moved past Ida on instinct, pushing the door open. Lily sat up in bed, hair sticking to her cheeks with sweat. The hall is in the closet now, she said, voice trembling. It is looking for my shoes. Claire's gaze flew to the closet door. The wallpaper band around it had thickened, vines reaching across the painted surface. She grabbed the knob and yanked it open. The closet's small space smelled of dust and fabric softener. The walls inside were no longer plain. Wallpaper covered every inch, edges tucked neatly into corners. The pattern inside was not the same as the room. It showed tall, thin trees, their trunks patterned with eyes, their branches bare. Her daughter's shoes sat neatly on the floor, toes pointed toward the wall. Claire stepped back. She felt Ida's presence at her shoulder. It is building rooms within rooms, Ida said softly. Little pockets, places it can stretch. What happens when it runs out of walls? Claire asked. Ida's hand rested lightly on her arm. It will look for more, she said. That is what it does. It wants to cover, to hold, to make every space reflect whatever it has learned from the people who live there. How do you live like this? Claire whispered. Carefully, Ida said. And with company, I have my son visit, my sister. Noise keeps it in check. Houses that only have one voice to listen to start thinking they own that voice. Claire thought of her own limited circle. A coworker she sometimes joined for coffee. A neighbor who waved from his truck. No one who dropped by unannounced. No one who would notice if her walls swallowed her whole. She looked at Lily. Her daughter's eyes were huge, dark in the dim room. Mom, she said, can we go? Go where? Claire asked, though the answer was obvious. To someplace with paint, Lily said. Just paint. No flowers. No whispers. Claire's throat closed. She thought of the lease, the deposit she did not have enough to lose, the stability of the job. the risk of another move on her child's thin social roots. She also thought of the way the wallpaper had crept under paint, uninvited, the way trash bags had fused to the street. She did not know whether leaving would even matter. Some nights, the wallpaper stayed quiet. On those nights, the house felt almost normal. The heater cycled, the refrigerator hummed, the clock in the kitchen ticked. Lily fell asleep easily, her breathing soft and even. Claire did dishes, answered emails, watched half an episode of something streaming, and forgot to care how it ended. On other nights, the wallpaper shifted. The sounds it made grew more complex. Not just rustling now, not just fabric dragging. Sometimes it sounded like distant conversation, like voices talking just at the edge of hearing, too low and fast to follow. Sometimes it sounded like laughter. One night, Claire woke with the sense of being watched. Her room was dark, save for the faint light from the street leaking through the curtains. She rolled over, heart thudding, and stared at the wall beside her bed. In the dimness, the pattern there, a band that had not existed 2 weeks before, seemed to flicker. Rows of small shapes had appeared in the loops. They were not flowers. They were not vines. They were eyes. Not realistically rendered, no lashes or irises. Just simple ovals with darker centers, stylized, printed. They were arranged in lines that followed the band around the room. Every one of them seemed trained on her. She lay there, breath shallow, unable to look away. The longer she stared, the more something in her felt stretched, her thoughts trailing, her sense of time slipping. She had the sudden, suffocating feeling that she was the one printed on the wall, that her presence was the work of some pattern she could not see, that her own movements were loops in some larger design. She squeezed her eyes shut. When she opened them, the pattern looked the same, but the feeling had receded. In the morning, the eyes were still there. She ran her fingers along the raised ink. The little ovals were smooth under her touch, their dark centers flat. She found herself avoiding that side of the room when she dressed, when she made the bed, when she rummaged in the dresser. In the living room, the wallpaper had developed a different taste. The band that circled the room showed no eyes, no flowers. Instead, it had grown small, detailed scenes. Tiny forests, each batch of trees slightly different. Little ponds, knots of roots. In some of the scenes, if she squinted, she could make out figures. A child standing at the edge of a clearing. A man sitting in a chair that was not much more than a dark shape. A woman holding something in her arms. They were not detailed portraits, just silhouettes, but the suggestion was enough. One evening, Claire sat on the couch, Lily pressed against her side, watching a cartoon where animals and clothes made bad decisions in song. The television's light washed over the patterned band, making the printed scenes flicker. Out of the corner of her eye, Claire saw one of the tiny figures move. Her head snapped around. The pattern lay still. She told herself it was the play of light. The television's changing colors, making the ink seem to shift. Lily's fingers tightened on her arm. "Did you see that?" she whispered. "See what?" Claire asked, keeping her voice level. "The dad moved," Lily said. Claire stared at the band. In one of the small scenes near the corner, the silhouette of a man in a chair sat with his head bowed. That was all. That had always been all. She looked harder. For a moment, she saw the head lift, just a fraction, as if something behind the paper had straightened. She stood. "We are going to eat in the kitchen," she said. "Bring your plate." Lily obeyed without complaint. They sat at the narrow table under the harsh overhead light, their backs to the walls. After that, Claire turned the couch so it faced away from the patterned band, toward the window instead. The room felt smaller. The wallpaper seemed closer. She called the agency again, this time staying on the line until someone answered. A man with a tired voice listened to her halting explanation. "There is an issue with the walls," she said. The old wallpaper keeps coming back. It is not normal. My daughter is scared. I am scared. I need someone to come look at it. Sounds like a cosmetic problem, the man said. We can put in a ticket, but it may be a while. We prioritize plumbing and heat and that kind of thing. This is not cosmetic, she said, fighting the surge of frustration. It is. It is doing something. I can hear it at night. Ma'am, it is an old house, the man said. Old houses settle. Pipes knock. Squirrels get in the walls. We can send maintenance to check for rodents if you want. It is not rodents, she said. He sighed. Look, he said. We can have someone stop by next week. Take a look. In the meantime, maybe do not strip any more paper. Sometimes that can make things worse. She hung up with a sense of futile anger. She wanted someone in authority to tell her she was not losing her mind. She wanted someone with a tool belt and work boots to walk in, peel back a strip of paper, and say, here is your problem. Bad glue, faulty plaster, mouse nest, we can fix that. Instead, the house and its shifting skin remained hers alone to deal with. The maintenance visit never materialized. Days passed. No one showed. On the last day of school before winter break, snow fell in big, wet clumps, sticking to the grass and slushing on the roads. The children in Claire's class were too excited to sit still. She let them draw, their crayons scraping, their voices rising and falling. They drew houses again. When she walked between the desks, Claire saw that several had drawn interiors with patterned walls. Their little pencils had rendered vines and flowers, eyes and trees. Where did you see that wallpaper? She asked one boy. In my aunt's house, he said. In our church, another said. In the hallway at the doctor's, a girl whispered. The designs varied, but a certain curl, a certain tilt of a flower repeated. The idea slid into Claire that whatever lived under her walls was not confined to one house, that the paper might be kissing the seams of half the town's rooms, waiting. On the walk home, the snow wet her hair, slipped under the collar of her coat. Lily stomped through the slush, laughing, her boots leaving prints that filled quickly with melt. The houses along Willow Street wore their thin layer of white like dust. Ida's place had a wreath on the door, its fake holly glossy. Claire's own house looked more hunched than usual, its roofline blurred. Inside, the air smelled faintly of damp and old paper. The wallpaper in the hallway had changed again. The band that circled it had thickened, reaching up and down, swallowing more of the plain paint. In places, it had grown beyond its earlier bounds, creeping toward the ceiling, pulling itself into rough arches over the doors. The patterns within the band had intensified. The eyes in her bedroom were clearer, their centers darker. The forest scenes in the living room showed more trees, deeper shadows. In Lily's room, the flowers had opened wider, their petals curling back to reveal small, dark centers that were not seeds. Lily stopped in the hallway, her back stiff. It is getting ready, she murmured. For what? Claire asked, though she was not sure she wanted the answer. To move, Lily said. It is bored here. That night, Claire could not bring herself to sleep in her own room. The sense of being watched by rows of printed eyes was too much. She made up the couch, the cushions too short for her legs, and lay there, the band of forest scenes at her back, a steady, unsettling presence. Sometime in the dark, the temperature dropped. She woke with her nose cold, breath fogging faintly. The heater did not kick on. The hum of the refrigerator had stuttered out. The house lay in a pocket of thick, quiet air. She sat up. The living room walls glowed faintly. The light did not come from lamps or streetlights. It seeped from behind the wallpaper, a soft, pulsing luminescence, like the glow of something bioluminescent under the surface of water. She stood, heart pounding. The scenes in the band had changed. The little forests were gone. In their place, she saw tiny replicas of rooms, square shapes filled with familiar layouts. There was the living room, couch turned toward the window. There was Lily's room, bed against the papered wall. There was her own bedroom, dresser under the mirror. In each tiny room, miniature figures moved. A woman on a couch, sitting up. A child in bed, tossing. A man she did not recognize, standing in a doorway. As she watched, the tiny woman on the couch lifted her head and turned it. The tiny face, no bigger than her fingernail, tipped up, its featureless shape somehow conveying attention. Claire stumbled backward until she hit the arm of the couch. Her breath came shallow and fast. She wanted to tear the wallpaper down. She wanted to dig her fingers into the plaster and rip until her nails bled. The air pressed against her. She heard, clearly then, the voices. They did not come from one direction. They came from all around, from the walls, the ceiling, the floor. Layers of whispers, overlapping. Some spoke in tones she almost recognized. A child's complaint about homework. An adult's murmur about bills. A laugh that could have come from her own throat years ago, before she had known how thin a laugh could stretch over fear. Other voices spoke in languages she did not know. Some were little more than sighs on vowels. They said one word more often than any other: home. The house held the sound of that word like breath. Claire clapped her hands over her ears. "Stop," she said, or thought she did. Her own voice sounded lost in the layers. From down the hallway, a small voice rose. "Mom, Lily." Claire ran. Her feet pounded on the floorboards, each step landing with less sound than it should. The hallway's band of wallpaper had spread while she had been in the living room. It now covered nearly the entire expanse of wall, floor to ceiling, broken only by the door frames. The patterns swarmed, overlapping. Eyes, flowers, scenes, script, all woven together. The paper rippled. Lily stood in her doorway. Her hair hung in her face, her eyes huge. "The room is not mine anymore," she said. Behind her, the space that had been her small bedroom was no longer recognizable. The bed was there, but its legs had sunk into the floor as if the boards had turned soft and taken them in. The dresser leaned at an angle. The walls, floor, and ceiling were covered entirely in wallpaper. The pattern inside that room was not uniform. One section showed the forest of eyes Ida had spoken of, tree trunks covered in watching shapes. Another was a cavern of mouths, open in endless whispers. Another still was a field of empty beds in rows, sheets turned down. The paper crawled. It did not move in long strips anymore. It shifted in overlapping waves, folds swelling and sinking, like something breathing. Claire grabbed Lily's hand. "Come on," she said. "We are leaving." "To where?" Lily whispered, tears spilling. "Out," Claire said. "Anywhere that is not here." She pulled, expecting the resistance of a child, the weight of her daughter's body. Her hand passed through Lily's fingers, as if through smoke. She stumbled, nearly falling. She turned. Lily stood in the doorway still, but her outline was not solid. The edges of her form blurred, the air around her shimmering. "Mom?" Lily said, voice echoing slightly, as if coming from the end of a long tunnel. It already chose. Claire's chest constricted. She reached again, desperate. Her hand met resistance this time, a flat, smooth surface, the wallpaper. On the inside of the doorway, under her palm, a pattern of small, delicate hands pressed outward. Her own fingers shook. "Please," she whispered, though she did not know to whom she spoke. The house, the paper, the voices. The band of wallpaper around the doorway pulsed under her palm, as if in answer. She felt something slick curl around her wrist, pulling. She yanked back. Her skin came away with a faint stickiness, as if she had touched flypaper. A thin residue clung to her, smelling of old glue. Inside the room, Lily took a step back. The floor rippled under her bare feet. "Do not be mad," she said. "I think it was lonely." With that, the wallpaper surged. It lifted from the walls in great folds, like sheets shaken out. It rolled from the ceiling, poured from the corners. It curled around the bed, around the dresser, around Lily. Claire screamed. The sound vanished into the thick air. For a moment, she saw her daughter's face between the overlapping patterns, eyes wide, mouth forming her name. Then the folds closed. The wallpaper smoothed. The room was gone. Where the doorway had been now lay a wall covered in seamless pattern. No hinges, no knob, no trim. Just flowers, vines, eyes, script, forests, caverns. The wallpaper had consumed the room. Claire stumbled back, shoulder hitting the opposite wall. Her breath came in harsh, tearing gasps. She hit the wall with her fists. "Give her back," she shouted. "Take me. Take the house. Take whatever you want. Give her back." The paper under her knuckles shuddered. For a moment, she saw the faint outline of a small hand press against the other side, fingers splayed. Then it was gone. The voices surged, louder, all around her. They were not malicious. They sounded hungry. Behind her, the band in the living room pulsed, scenes shifting faster. Little rooms filled with tiny figures, more each second. Claire staggered, dizzy. She knew, in some distant, rational part of her, that she should run. Out the front door, down the steps, into the yard, away from the house. Her legs would not move. The wallpaper flowed. It crawled under her bare feet, up her ankles, around her calves. The texture was slick and dry all at once, like parchment. It climbed, wrapping her thighs, her hips, her waist. She tried to step back, but there was no backward. Every surface she pressed against was paper. The band in the hallway thickened, rising, swallowing the last of the off-white paint. Her vision narrowed. The last thing she saw clearly was Ida across the street, standing at her own window, her face pale, one hand pressed against the glass. Then the wallpaper closed over her. The house sat on Willow Street, quiet under its thin layer of snow. Inside, the wallpaper settled. It lay smooth and neat over every wall, every ceiling, every hidden corner. Its patterns wound through each space, vines curling, eyes opening and closing, forests deepening, caverns echoing. There were no rooms anymore in the way people meant. There were spaces within spaces, folds within folds. In some, tiny silhouettes moved. A child ran down a hall that had no end, her laughter muted. A woman sat at a table that existed in loops, her hands resting on a surface that was also a wall, that was also a ceiling. A man held his head in his hands in a room that was entirely made of eyes. The wallpaper whispered to itself, not in words that anyone outside would have understood, but in a language of patterns and echoes, of glued seams and curling edges. It remembered the family that had vanished before, the father who had paced, the child who had cried, the mother who had slipped into silence. It remembered the older couple and their careful choices, the renters who had come and gone, the landlord's half-efforts at covering. It remembered Claire and Lily. It added their shapes to its design. On quiet nights, when the wind was low and the street empty, if someone had stood on the sidewalk and pressed their ear against the flaking paint of the porch rail, they might have heard the faintest murmur coming from inside. A sound like pages turning. Time passed. Snow melted. Grass pushed through thin soil. The maple tree out front budded, leafed, dropped its leaves again. The agency put a sign in the yard eventually. For rent. It leaned at a slight angle, the plastic bending in the wind. The phone number printed on it faded in the sun, digits blurring. People drove past. Some slowed, eyes lingering on the sagging porch, the bare windows. Some did not notice at all. Inside the house, the wallpaper waited. It listened to footsteps on the sidewalk, to cars idling at the end of the street, to the rustle of leaves, to the sighs of other houses. It felt for cracks, for seams, for thin spots in the skins of rooms beyond its own. Wallpaper in other houses had begun, quietly, to feel the pull. A strip in a church basement lifted at one corner. A band in a doctor's waiting room loosened. A square behind a couch in an apartment 3 streets over-shivered under its paint. And a small rental where a young man flipped through channels on a too-bright television. The pattern behind his head seemed to shift, vines curling a fraction closer to his outline. He did not notice. He would. In Ida's house, the back room stayed closed. She sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug that had gone cold. She listened to her own walls, to the sighs and creaks, to the way the paint sometimes seemed to thrum with a pulse not her own. She knew better than to go knocking on the house across the street. Some places, once they had taken what they wanted, did not give it back. She watched the for rent sign warp and fade. She watched the way kids on bikes sped up when they passed the yard, how dogs tugged at their leashes with ears flat. She wondered who would come next. Not if. Houses like that never stayed empty forever. Paper did not like to sit unused in the dark. One soft evening, not long after the leaves had turned again, a car she did not recognize pulled up in front of the house. A couple stepped out. They stood at the end of the walk, looking up at the sagging porch, at the bare windows. The woman shaded her eyes, trying to see inside. The man glanced up and down the street, taking in the maples, the other houses, the way the sun set behind the field. From where she sat on her porch, Ida could hear their low voices. "Affordable," the woman said. "We can fix it up," the man said. "Give it some love." Behind the bare glass, the wallpaper rustled. Patterns shifted, vines stretching, eyes opening in the dim. In the narrow strip where the living room met the hall, a small, delicate loop of ink-formed letters. Welcome. The couple did not see it. Not yet. They walked up the path, their steps soft on the cracked concrete. The key turned in the lock with a sound that, to Ida's ears, was far too much like the first tear of paper from a roll. The door opened. The wallpaper breathed.